Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of In the Eyes of Truth. Today, back with us is our friend Drago Bosnic, and we're discussing the mess that seems to be deepening in Yugoslavia, well, formerly Yugoslavia, maybe future Yugoslavia again. We can hope.
Well,
Uh,
we don't need another one. Like, let's just do Serbia, the real one.
Serbia, including Srpska Republic.
Yeah, yeah, and then several other territories that should really be returned to us, but that's a long story.
Zagreb?
Hey there, entrepreneurs. Are you feeling the squeeze from increasing regulations and higher taxes? Maybe you've noticed the growing instability and thought there has to be a better way. Well, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to consider offshoring your wealth now. Imagine a life where your hard-earned money isn't constantly under threat from unpredictable government policies. Sounds pretty good, right? Let me tell you. It's not just a dream, it's a smart strategy. Here at Exit Strategy, we specialize in helping entrepreneurs like you protect and grow their wealth. We navigate the complex world of international finance so you don't have to, from setting up offshore accounts to advising on the best countries with favorable tax laws. We've got you covered. Now, I know what you're thinking. Offshoring sounds risky, maybe even a bit shady, but the truth is many savvy business owners are already doing it. It's not just about dodging taxes, it's about creating a safety net for your future. Imagine diversifying your assets across multiple jurisdictions. When one country faces economic downturns, your wealth remains secure. Think of it as an insurance policy against the uncertainties of life. And let's not forget, having a portion of your wealth offshore can open up opportunities for international investments. You're no longer limited by the economic climate of a single country. You can tap into booming markets around the world, maximizing your returns. But here's the kicker. Time is of the essence. With increasing global scrutiny and tightening regulations, the window for easy offshoring is closing fast. The sooner you act, the better positioned you'll be. So why wait? Protect your wealth, secure your future, and explore new opportunities with Exit Strategy. Don't let the rising dangers in the US economy catch you off guard. Reach out to us today and take the first step towards financial freedom. Because when it comes to your wealth, playing it safe is the riskiest move of all. Thanks for watching, and remember, your future starts with the decisions you make today. Choose wisely, choose Exit Strategy. Catch you in the next video.
No, no, they can keep it. There are other territories that are Serbian, so
Yeah. Sarajevo?
uh, for instance, yeah, I mean, it was ours in the Middle Ages. I don't see a reason why it shouldn't be now. So,
True, very true, very, very true. Definitely Kosovo. Well, that is Serbia, whether
yeah, yeah, I
certain
mean,
elements.
that's non-negotiable for us. So,
It shouldn't be.
yeah.
Absolutely. Get the Johnny come latelys out of there, and if need be, a tank point. Uh, and would Vučić ever actually do that?
Well, I mean, if the conditions are met, like if everything falls in place, maybe. But I'm more like when it comes to like the Serbian security and everything, it's impossible without Russia. Like there was not a single point in Serbian history where Russia was weak and we were strong. It was always like, it was always parallel. So
Hmm.
essentially, if Serbia wants to be safe, Russia needs to be strong, and Serbia needs to be allied to Russia. Anything less than that is going to be a total mess for us, as we can see now, unfortunately.
Well, I think unfortunately for that, we have to start with either Romania or Greece, because we have to have a land corridor,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, I
or
mean,
or Chorna Gora.
yeah, at least, this is one of the reasons why Montenegro was pretty much separated from Serbia in 2006. They wanted to make sure that we don't have any sort of a corridor to Russia. And if we had, any sort of a coast, our political or geopolitical position would have been far, far better. Now we are completely surrounded. So we have a choice, like either work with the West, which is always, a messy thing, or be entirely compliant. So now we're like somewhere in between, like because the West doesn't want someone who's going to be like 85 or 90% compliant. They want someone who's going to be a freaking slave. So that means 200% compliant. And this is the reason why Serbia is being destabilized all the time.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering with the sound and everything, I'm on vacation right now, so I'm not in my office. That's why the gear is different and the lighting is off. So, but should have said that at the very beginning. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Now look, the Maidan, has that calmed down, or is that revving back up? And who's in this Maidan? Is it just liberals, or is it conservatives and liberals?
The thing is, it's very strange. So first of all, I just want to say that not everyone who is protesting is a traitor. Like that's something that should be understood. The point is, because of the way that the government is conducting its policies, which we can call it like controlled betrayal. That's how most people are, most analysts are describing it. Like the thing is, it's almost like during World War II. You have to do what you're told, otherwise you're going to be dead, and a bunch of other people are going to be dead as well. And the thing is, it actually makes sense because we're not going to be any good to Russia if we, start some sort of a, I don't know, whatever, a confrontation with the West that where Russia cannot help us now because it's busy with Ukraine and surely, in foreseeable future, is also going to be busy in Central Asia. That also needs to be taken care of at some point because we see the Turks are trying to move into the region through the Zangezur corridor, so-called Zangezur corridor, and we see that the Bashinian is also, conducting anti-Armenian, anti-Russian, or anti-human policies, if you want. He's attacking the Armenian church and so on. So while Russia is dealing with all that mess, it doesn't have the time to deal with another mess, and this is why this status quo is so important to Russia itself and also to Serbia, because, by the time Russia reconsolidates its power in Europe, it needs to have a functioning ally, which Serbia is going to be at some point. We don't know if it's going to be in 10 years, in 20 years, it doesn't matter. As long as we can survive long enough to to at some point help reestablish Russia's position in Europe. And the thing is, because of the so-called controlled betrayal, a lot of nationalists are very, very angry at the government, and this is the reason why some of them are part of the protests. It's just they hate, they hate this. They want to fight against the West entirely, and there are other people who are entirely pro-Western. So like their interests are converging when it comes to Vucic, but it's not helping the country at all. I mean, you can remove Vucic, right? And then what happens? Like you either have the nationalists, and then we're going to get crushed, or you have the liberals, and then we're going to cut off all ties with Russia, and then we're fucked. So, pardon my French, but that's the point. If we allow someone from the so-called opposition who is a liberal or ultra liberal, whatever you want to call them, pro-Western in general, if they take control of Serbia, we're doomed because it's not just about survival in the geopolitical sense, it's survival in the civilizational and demographic sense because these people are going to implement Western neoliberal ultra extremist policies that are going to destroy our nation just like they're destroying various nations in Europe.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, there was an article that just came out. Well, it was an article, as a news flash that came out that Mark Duric, I think is the
Marko
name,
Đurić, yeah.
Marko Duric, the foreign minister of Serbia, signed an agreement with Uganda, and this is the second one
Ghana.
because he with
Ghana. It's not Uganda,
Ghana,
it's
Ghana,
Ghana, but
right,
yeah,
Ghana,
yeah.
Ghana, Ghana, right. With Ghana, and this is the second one after he signed one with Egypt, allowing 100,000 work visas into Serbia just for this year alone. And that's, I mean, these aren't people that have anything in common with Serbs, not religion, not racial, not cultural, nothing, zero, not
Yeah.
nothing at all. I mean, this is like bringing, Well, hell, it's worse than bringing Pakistanis into England because at least England had some cultural influence on them as colonies.
Yeah.
And this is, as I recall, the youth unemployment rate is 24%.
Yeah, the thing is, we're now stuck in what could be described as like the worst possible economic situation, not in terms of like quality of life, but the thing is, Serbia needs, workers who are going to work in the construction, and all these other like industrial branches of the economy, and a lot of people don't want to do that, especially like, how the situation is in Europe, with these so-called Christian nations. As soon as the quality of life has improved slightly, you have like a lack of everyone, working in the industry. So you need people that are going to work in these industries. The problem is Serbia is not a very rich country, so you can only get people from very, very poor countries. You can't rely on importing a bunch of Turks or Kurds who are going to, construct stuff and then go back. You have to find someone who's going to be even cheaper. And those are unfortunately people from Africa. So it's like a very, very bad spot. Serbia is in a very bad spot. It's not rich enough to attract, other people, and it's like rich enough that it needs, to import to import people who are going to do these jobs that most of our youth unfortunately doesn't want to. So I'm not justifying it. The thing is, Serbia has never had colonies. On the contrary, just like Russia or the former USSR, we were actually helping countries in Africa liberate themselves. We were educating their elites, like we were educating their doctors, their lawyers, like pretty much the entire state apparatus. So we had black people moving into Serbia and studying here in the 1950s and 60s, at a time when there were like so-called human zoos in Western Europe, where they were keeping them like along with the chimpanzees and the elephants and God knows which other animals. So, we never treated them as subhumans. We don't think of them as subhumans because we don't have this Western superiority complex. So I don't mind these people, I have nothing against them. It's just that I don't want my nation to be changed in any way, especially, through these neoliberal policies where, they just move in a bunch of cheap labor people, and then, you have a mix of God knows what. These are the neoliberal policies. This is not just economy. It's ideology. It's a total change of your entire population, the way of thinking, the way of life, and so on. And the economy is just, one part of it. Like neoliberalism is not just an economic category anymore. It's far more than that.
Oh, it's always been that way. It's
Yeah,
a theology, I think is
yeah,
the way
pretty
to put
much.
it. Well, when you're saying you had students come in, but at that point you're looking at intelligent people, educated people, who some will leave, some may stay, but when they stay, they tend to integrate, and they tend to, and they understand the need to integrate and assimilate. When you start bringing in 100,000 people that that most of them probably cannot read and write or can barely read and write, and in such big numbers in such short time, they're never going to assimilate.
Exactly. There's
It's
no way. They're
instant
also
ghetto.
going to be economically disadvantaged, right? They're going to be the working class or even lower than that because essentially in neoliberalism, when you move in so many people, they are effectively slaves. So they are treated as slaves. So there's going to be resentment towards the, domestic population. We see that in Western Europe. This is why you have so many knife attacks, so many rapes, and so on and so on. The thing is, the neoliberal economic model has proven to be the worst ever, especially I mean, both for the indigenous population and those moving in. Because, like if you have millions of Africans who would otherwise help their own countries move into Europe to do all the things that the Europeans don't want to, then both sides suffer. But the neoliberals don't give a damn about that. They're not the ones, like these neoliberal elites, they're not the ones who are going to suffer the consequences of these policies. It's going to be the regular people, and that's it.
Yeah, if you look at it, slavery, and that's what we're talking about, because the way you beat the market forces is by bringing something externally into the market. So you have market forces on labor. You have so much labor, you have so much demand, and if demand outweighs supply, prices go up. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Exactly.
And it's the way it should work. The way you get around it is just you bring in a bunch of basically slave labor that works at a very set low price, lowers wages for everybody, by the way, lowers tax revenues, increases tax expenditures, sorry, because of crime and everything else that goes with it, poverty, and you break the system. But if you look at it historically, the Roman Empire fell for that reason, particularly the Western Roman Empire, because mass importation of slavery helped the ruling class that had the big farms, the big slave plantations, and it just crushed the independent farmers. It just crushed the middle class. And
Exactly, exactly. They were like these independent farmers, as you said, but they wanted to create these latifundia. They were literally called latifundia, which is like a
mhm,
massive estate owned by these senators and all these like politicians, patricians as they were called in the Roman Empire. So at some point they had like 35% of the Roman population were slaves. But the
yeah,
thing is, you have slaves who are not considered humans. Like they were considered things, like just like you have a cow or a goat or whatever, or a couch. And this is one of the things, as you said, that contributed to the fall of the Roman Empire. And now we see the same thing happening in the West. Unfortunately, because Serbia is pretty much westernized, especially in terms of its law, the legal system, which has been copied from the European Union because of our, the agreement, on joining the EU. We are required to do this, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah,
So we're being westernized on an institutional level. And of course, everything else goes with that. And that includes cheap labor being imported from, God knows where. And, the thing is, this is the reason why the West starts all these wars. And warfare is not just kinetic. You have economic. You have every other sort of warfare. Africa is in a state of constant warfare that nobody really talks about because
yeah.
this warfare is also seen in the fact that the economy of these countries doesn't work, and that's why they hate Ibrahim Traore so much. They hate these the three countries that liberated themselves from the French colonial rule thanks to the Russians, the Russian military, the Wagner specifically. So, we can only hope that Wagner is going to move into more of these African countries and help them, obtain sovereignty so that we can stop these processes, essentially.
Yeah, very true. But why? Okay, so obviously the youth, the 24% unemployment, youth are not starving. They're not on the
Yeah.
streets begging for food. Where are they getting the money?
Well, I mean, they're mostly like, they have the money from their parents. The Serbian population is very, very family oriented. This has its upsides, obviously, but also has its downsides because parents are often going to let their kids live with them until they're like 45, in the house. So essentially, this gives a lot of people leisure and it gives them enough free time, and resources to survive and do stupid shit, And one of those stupid things is to try to pretty much topple your government without realizing you're being used by someone else. And of course, I get a lot of hate for this. Like a lot of people are telling me, "Oh, you are a Vucic bot. You are a Vucic fan, whatever." But the thing is, I don't need to be. If you don't see the pattern of these color revolutions, well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Just continue living in fantasy land.
Well, first of all, a lot of Serb youth left left Serbia for other European countries. Is there any
Yeah.
effort being made to bring them back, to
Well,
get them to come back and work in
oh,
their country?
there are some people, like very few, who came back because not because of economic reasons, but because of societal reasons. I have family members who have pretty much grown sick and tired of this LGBTQ bullshit that is being imposed on kids. I have a cousin who moved back from Canada because of that. Because his kids they were being taught about LGBT in, like, I don't know, at 6 years old.
Yeah, that's
They
normal
had
there.
these like insane, a rainbow color head, and all these other piercings and shit in their head and whatever. Teachers. I mean, you would never get the chance to be a
In,
teacher in Serbia, like or Yugoslavia or the USSR.
indoctrinators,
Yeah,
indoctrinators. Let's say,
indoctrinators. They're not
yeah,
teachers. They're literally indoctrinators. Like you have these people who are not qualified for anything in life, literally not qualified for anything in life, except to indoctrinate your kids and turn them into degenerates. And the thing is, no amount of money is going to compensate for that because yeah, they can give you $1 billion, but the thing is, your bloodline is lost. If your kids are turned into degenerates, it doesn't make freaking sense at all.
yeah. Well, so is the Vucic government doing anything to try to get the youth to come back, to move back, fill the jobs, or maybe a propaganda campaign to get parents to do some tough love and put a swift kick in the ass of the kids who are sitting
Yeah,
around doing nothing to go get a job?
like the thing is, we don't have the resources to do that because we need cheap labor, and these people live mostly in rich Western countries. Like in Switzerland and the UK and the US, Canada, Scandinavia, Germany, Austria, France. Like there is no way that you can pretty much you can't do anything about it. Like you can't try to bring them back because what are they going to do? What you could do is like you could try to somehow make sure that Serbian entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs who live there come and invest in Serbia. That's what you can do, but that's like a very limited number of people, and they're not going to move back. Like they're just investors. They're easier to talk to and negotiate than total foreigners. But this is pretty much what you can do, and this is what the government has been trying to do to a certain degree. Not obviously not enough is being done, but the thing is, our space for maneuver is very very limited. The government, as I said, is has very limited sovereignty, like 5%, 10% tops, because this is the most we can get. Without, if we try to go for more, then the West is going to think we're a problem, and then we're going to get crushed. If we go for less, then we might as well just surrender. So like this is the sweet spot at this very moment. Like this is the best we can do, just to survive somehow until better times come. And hopefully, I want this to be as soon as possible because this is unbearable for me myself. When I see the policies that are being implemented, I hate it. With my guts, I hate it. But I know that if you try to refuse this, you're going to get crushed. And this is like this is the messaging we're getting from the West all the freaking time. Like, if you're not compliant, you're going to get crushed. If you're not compliant, you're going to get crushed. And like every single time when you try to go for a bit more, they just remind you that there's nothing you can do if they decide to crush you. And the thing is, they're desperate for a win. We would be a perfect target for them at this moment. They can't defeat Russia. They know this. They know, like we see these stupid comments, by American generals who are saying, "Oh, we're going to take, Kaliningrad faster than you can imagine." Well, I mean, good luck with that. There are 150 Russian nukes and Iskanders there. You can't deal with Iskanders in Ukraine, where you have more patriots in Ukraine, or you had more patriots in Ukraine than any other place in the world, and they got crushed by Iskanders. And these Iskanders in Kaliningrad are nuclear armed. And guess what? They're also being their range is being doubled to 1,000 kilometers. So you're going to have every major European capital in range of these things. So good luck with that. They can try to do that, but the thing is, of course, Russia is unbeatable. On the other hand, Serbia is a very small country that can be crushed pretty easily, and they just can't wait because they need some sort of a win, especially by the time that Russia finishes SMO in Ukraine. The loss is going to be a shock for most Westerners because they're being told that Russia is losing, that 2 million Russian soldiers is dead, and so on and so on. So when reality hits them, they will need some sort of cushion for that, and Serbia might as well be the cushion, and it would be the best thing for us to try to avoid that.
What about the overtures with Hungary? Because Hungary and Slovakia, at least for now, are standing pretty firm. And then there were defense overtures between Serbia and Hungary.
Yeah, yeah, we have very, very good relations with both countries. The problem is, this is not something systemic. It's completely based on personal relations between Vucic, Orban, and Fico. And the thing is,
Mhm.
as long as we have Fico and Orban in those countries, they're going to push back. The point is like the populations are, let's say, pretty neutral towards Serbia, but it's this governments, the system itself that is actually working with Serbia. And both of those countries also being pushed into these degenerate policies. They're being pushed into a war with Russia, pretty much with a war with Russia. The Slovakians have actually given up on their air force for what? For like I don't know, decades old American AH-1 helicopters. Like you're giving MiG-29s for attack helicopters who are like from Vietnam era. So like it's a stupid way of doing things, and this is why the Slovakians were so angry at the previous government and they elected Fico, right? But of course, Fico almost got killed, and we don't even we don't know
Barbaros.
if they're gonna kill him next time. Next time it might work, and then they can bring in another puppet government. So this is very problematic, but I think it's a good way to relieve some of the pressure. And if you have Slovakia, Serbia, and Hungary, it's a little bit of a like a Central European bloc that is giving us some breathing room. It's not perfect. It would be best if we could have, some sort of a corridor with Russia, but for the time being, this is the best we can do.
Yeah, that's it's a very sad situation. It's a very
Yeah.
sad. What about Chornogoria? Uh, Now they overthrew the previous EU-backed dictatorship, um, and they went off the radar. What is going on with them? I mean, they're
It
Serbs in the end of
happened.
the day.
I presumed that was going to happen. The people who are in power in Montenegro now are at least not hostile to Serbia. Like they're, let's say, neutral. This is also because of NATO, because NATO is telling them you will not be in any sort of an alliance with Serbia, let alone Russia, obviously. So we have the continuation of pretty much the same policies in regards to Russia and most of other things, except the enmity towards Serbia. So the previous EU-backed dictatorship, as you rightfully called it, it was extremely violently anti-Serbian, and this government is not as anti-Serbian or not anti-Serbian at all in many respects. This government respects the rights of Serbs within Montenegro, and this is like a good thing for us. But in the grand scheme of things, Montenegro is a NATO vassal, NATO satellite state, pretty much.
What's interesting, you say, they're not hostile to Serbs, considering
Yeah.
Montenegro, Chornogoria are Serbs.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the Montenegro, the modern Montenegro is an anti-Serbian entity. Like the old one that existed like 100 years ago and that actually participated in the Russo-Japanese War, which is a very, little known fact. Uh, just for those who don't know, like this is a bit of trivia. Montenegro signed a peace agreement with Japan about like 10 to 15 years ago, because in 2006 they became independent. And the thing is, Montenegro declared war on Japan in 1905 because of the Russo-Japanese War, and this war continued officially going, after Montenegro ceased to exist as a state. So there was never, a peace treaty, and it was signed only in the 2000s after the so-called independence. So the thing is, the old Montenegro was a Serbian state. It was completely aligned with Russia, even more than Serbia itself at the time, in many respects. So this Montenegro that exists now is an abomination of the old Montenegro, which was a Serbian state 100%. Like if you go and type in, even on Wikipedia, the Kingdom of Montenegro, you have the Serbian Orthodox Church as the official church, the Serbian language as the official language, and 95% of the population was listed as Serbian. Now you have like officially 40% of Serbs, maybe like 30 to 40% of Serbs. But it's
Who are the
interesting.
rest?
The rest are consider themselves Montenegrins, which is like not different from Serbs. They are Serbs. But the thing is, it's so funny. Like you have a very mixed identity in Montenegro now, officially at least. So you have like 20% of the population that speaks Montenegrine, which is not a. It's Serbian. 80% say that they speak Serbian. And then you have like people who are officially Montenegrins, but they don't speak Montenegrine. They say, oh, we don't speak Montenegrine, we speak Serbian. So like they are Montenegrins officially, on their ethnic census, but they don't speak Montenegrin because they think, okay, we can renounce the Serbian identity for now, like, but we're not going to go as far, and invent a language that doesn't exist. And the best part is the church. 95% of Christians in Montenegro belong to the Serbian Orthodox Church. And there's a tiny percentage of this so-called Montenegrin Orthodox Church, which is like an LGBT friendly organization, which has nothing to do with Orthodoxy, obviously. Even the members of the previous regime that was working against Serbs, they would not become part of this Montenegrin so-called church. They were still part of the Serbian Orthodox Church. Like they would christen their kids in Serbian churches. They would marry their, daughters and sons in these churches and so on. The point is like you have this layered level of renouncing the Serbian identity, but the church is the strongest part of it because people realize, oh, if I'm going to do something in life, if I'm going to be a Christian, I might as well be a real Christian in a real Christian church that has existed for 1,000 years, not this LGBTQ bullshit that poses as a church.
I've seen this movie before somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying
It
to
almost
remember.
looks like Ukraine, but
Yeah,
that's
where
probably
have
a
I seen
conspiracy
this
theory.
movie?
That's probably a Russian propaganda and a conspiracy theory. Ukrainians are just democracy.
Yeah, and they're also the most ancient race of men, because we're not
Yeah,
men, we're orcs. Yeah,
yeah, right. Yeah, I forgot
all
about
other
that.
men come from Ukrainians. That's right, and they dug the Black Sea and they built your Carpathian Mountains. I mean, they have dumped the soil somewhere, right? Uh,
But they were not they were not very forward looking because they didn't build a mountain with on the border with Russia. They should have done that before.
oh, that's because they owned everything up to Siberia at that time.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Like, yeah, how could they know that they're going to lose everything like that? I mean, they're the most thing,
Yeah.
and the Hercules was a Ukrainian, and the Gauls were Ukrainians from Galicia, obviously, and the Celts were from Galicia or something. Yeah.
And of course they won the World War II because three fronts were Ukrainian fronts.
Oh yeah.
That's the probably the funniest thing to me because it's so schizophrenic. Like first of all, they're claiming that these three fronts that were Ukrainian, that it's like some sort of an ethnic category without realizing it was a geographical freaking category. And also, while being proud about that, they also celebrate Bandera, the guy who was on the other side of that front line. So that's very interesting.
I can understand them celebrating Bandera because they've been brainwashed and everyone else has been shut the hell up because they are a true, real Western democracy where the will of the people means absolutely nothing. The
Yep.
elites defend their democracy and they use the meat as they want to use the meat because that's what meat is made for. That would
Yep.
be all of you who are listening as peasants and serfs of the elites in the West. Don't kid yourself that you have any rights or any real rights.
Pretty
But when
much.
the Poles do that and support Bandera,
That
ah,
is, but I think that's because Russophobia runs so deep in the Polish discourse that they are ready to overlook the massacres done by Bandera of Poles in Western Ukraine. And not just Poles, there were also Russians and Jews and all these other people who were
and
massacred by these
yeah,
crazies. Like anyone who wasn't pure Ukrainian, whatever the hell that is, uh,
politically, first of all.
politically pure Ukrainian, he was massacred. And that includes all, like, they were killing pregnant women. I've
Okay.
seen, there was a Polish documentary about it, like, they know
Yeah,
about it.
I've seen the archive
But
photos.
yeah, I mean, it's horrifying. But the Russophobia runs so deep that they don't understand that they don't give a damn. They can forget about that for the time being, as long as they can, inflict some damage to Russia. But the thing is, Poles don't realize, and I talk about this with some Poles, because Poles and Serbs have pretty, strangely good relations because of our centuries of warfare against the Ottomans, and they did the same. They respect us a lot. And also during the 90s, we were fighting, the jihadis in Bosnia, which is also why they respect us. But the thing is, I keep telling them, guys, like, don't be the next Ukrainians, because you see, if the Russians start to wage war against Poles, that's it. Like they're not gonna, it's gonna be gloves off. They're gonna obliterate everything. And the thing is, the Russians weren't even thinking about the Poles before the war. In the grand scheme of things, Russia doesn't think about Poland. Russia thinks about America, China, the global order and so on. Poland is just like a footnote. But now
which
the
pisses them
Poles
off, I
have
think.
actually, yeah, yeah, that's just the way it is. But now, because of the Polish Russophobia
Well,
that has become very evident in Ukraine, the giant has actually laid eyes on Poland, and the giant is going to crush everything, in its in front of it if it needs to do that to ensure its safety, and that's exactly what's going to happen. And I tell Poles all the time, why don't you look the other way? The Russians haven't done anything to you in centuries. The thing is, it was the other way around. Poland, thanks to the Vatican and, the encouragement from Vatican, Poland moved into Russian lands and took parts of Western Ukraine, actually the entire Ukraine and the entire Belarus, and started the process of Polonization. On the other hand, what was happening behind their backs was the Germanization of Silesia and Pomerania. So, you have the West, which is pushing you against Russia while taking your actual ancestral lands in the western part. So, who gave those lands back to Poland? It was the evil Russians, right? If it weren't for this Red Army, Poland would never get those lands back because they were lost 1,000 years ago.
oh yeah.
And and the Polish western borders were not the last time they were, on the river on the border with the current border was like in the 11th or 12th century. Since then, the Germans have taken all of those lands and Germanized the entire populations there. And it was only thanks to Russia that they have the border that they have now.
And I've actually seen a copy of the signed document or photograph of the signed document. In 1946, Stalin sent 120,000 heads of cattle uh, to Poland to rebuild their herds that the Germans had either slaughtered or driven with them with their retreating forces westward. And this is while Russia was recovering, or Soviet Union was recovering from everything that the 3 years, 3.5 years of war on its own
Yeah.
soil.
There was
Uh,
famine. People don't know there was
yeah,
famine in Russia because everything was fucking burnt to the ground. Like you have Ukraine that was like the breadbasket of the Soviet Union that was burned to the ground for 3 years. Nobody was planting any crops.
yeah. That was one. Well, Ukraine as a breadbasket, honestly, is very overhyped. Uh, Russia, the Western Siberian plain is a huge basket. People just think Siberia, oh, it's all mountains and frozen or forest. Western Siberian plain is, yeah, it gets minus 40 in the winter, but it gets plus 40 in the summer, and it rains a lot. So it's a perfect soil, and there's a lot of crop growth in that area. And Kazakhstan too.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
today's
I mean,
Kazakhstan.
I meant, at the time, Ukraine was really like had the best soil. This has changed over the decades. Obviously, since 1950s, the Soviet Union pretty much invested enormous resources into making sure that the agriculture works in all these other parts of the USSR. But Ukraine remained, at the time, in the Imperial Russia and later in the early Soviet Union, really it was the breadbasket. But the thing is, it left the consequences. So it wasn't just the war. The war was just a part of the destruction that the Germans brought upon the Russian people, and that obviously includes the Ukrainians. When I say the Russian people, I always include Ukrainians. So despite whatever they want to think about it. When Lindsey Graham said that the best money they've ever spent was, on this war because the Russians are dying, Ukrainians never realize that also includes themselves. The Russians are dying.
Well,
It's also
Zelensky said that.
Ukrainians.
Zelensky flat out said that. That was his commercial pitch. That
Yeah,
look, I'm going to kill off the Russians. I'm sorry, the Ukrainians. Oh, but that's the same people. Well, he didn't quite say it that way, but that's the little hint. Ukrainians are
yeah.
Russians.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the thing. Like this is Russians fighting Russians. This is like the second Russian Civil War. It's just that the first one was being fought of over ideology and class, and this one is being fought over regional identities. And this is the way that the West always tries to dismantle Russia, always trying to, because they know they can't defeat Russia head on. They've tried that multiple times to get crushed every single time. And that was like before Russia had thousands of nukes. And of course, the delivery systems to ensure that anything that even thinks about that, is obliterated for all eternity. And the thing is, they know that the only way to dismantle Russia is from within. And that's exactly what they're doing.
It is. It is. Well, we are out of time.
Yeah.
We've got less than a minute. So thank you for joining.
My
Hoping to
pleasure as always, man.
build that corridor a little faster. You need to get Montenegro back, Chernogorия.
Oh, dude, if I gave you a list of things I want to get, we should get back. I mean, we would need like two more episodes at least.
Srpska Republic too,
Yeah,
obviously,
obviously.
and Kosovo. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Like I said, I apologize for the lighting and everything else, but I'm on vacation, so that's why the videos are coming slower and fewer. But we'll keep pushing them. So
Yep,
thank you everyone. Thanks, Drago.
my pleasure.
Cheers.